Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. It's good to be back after a long break. I have to comment, we just finished learning halachos tefillin before Sukkos, and I have the minhag not to wear tefillin on Chol HaMoed, and when I get back into shul on Isru Chag and I bring my tefillin with me, it's always a tremendous excitement to get back to putting on tefillin. And I make that bracha with more kavanah. We should make it with the same kavanah all year round. But when you put on the tefillin for the first time after a long break of Sukkos, it's such a wonderful feeling to put tefillin back on again, especially after spending so much time going through halachos tefillin together with you. So all of the background of halachos tefillin is still fresh in my mind. It was such a pleasure to put on tefillin this morning. And likewise, it's a pleasure to be back with you teaching Torah. Thank you so much for the opportunity to teach Torah. And here we are in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph, and we'll be learning today, Mirtz Hashem, part of Ayin Daled Amud Aleph and most of Ayin Daled Amud Beis. We're beginning a new topic today. So we're here on Ayin Daled Amud Aleph, halachos birchas hashachar u'sha'ar brachos, the halachos that pertain and govern the birchas hashachar, the brachos that we make in the morning, u'sha'ar brachos, as well as other brachos as well. Siman Mem Vav Dine birchas hashachar, the halachos of birchas hashachar, uboy tes seifim, and here we have 9 seifim. Says the Mechaber in Sif Aleph, Kishayar mishinasai, when one awakens from his sleep, Yomar, he should say Elokai Neshama. He should recite the bracha of Elokai Neshama. Now, right away, we're going to see the way the Mechaber discusses the birchas hashachar here in Sif Aleph. This is not what we do, halacha l'maisa, and we're going to discuss that a little bit further on in this year. But the Mechaber is really coming off of the Gemara, brachas tav samach amud beis, as well as the Rambam, and we'll discuss it in greater detail. But again, the way the Mechaber puts it, Kishayer mishnasai, when you awaken from your sleep, Yomer Elokai Neshama, right away you should recite the bracha of Elokai Neshama. Let's take a look right away here at the Mishnah Berurah. Now the Mishnah Berurah actually begins before Eis Katan Aleph on this Siman. If you go up a few lines, you'll see the word Kaidem. That's where we're going to start. The Mishnah Berurah says, Kaidem bayai lebeis hakneses, and I think this is, I always say, every Mishnah Berurah is important, but this is a very significant few lines here in Mishnah Berurah. Kaidem bayai lebeis hakneses, before one arrives in the Beis HaKnesses, ba'od shehu adayin b'hachotzer Beis HaKnesses, while he's still outside in the chotzer, in the courtyard of the Beis HaKnesses, before he actually enters the shul, Yomar, he should say, Beveis Elokim nahalech berogesh. We go into the house of Hashem berogesh, with intense feeling. V'yargish, and he should feel v'yirsa atzmoi. He should arouse in himself a feeling of trembling. B'kansai lebeis hakneses, when he enters the shul, meiroiv pachadoi, from intense pachad, from intense dread. V'yamtin, and then he should wait for a moment. V'yisham at, hold off for a moment. V'yomar, and then say, V'ani b'roiv chastecha, I, through your great kindness, avai veisecha, I come to your home. Eshtachave, I bow down. El heichal kachacha, to your heichal. The heichal is the Beis Hamikdash. B'yirasecha, in fear of you. V'achakach yikanes, and only then should he enter into the Beis HaKnesses. Rabbi say, we tend to take for granted our ability to come to shul. And how do we think of shul? We think of shul is a building where we get together and we daven. I mean, yeah, that's what we do there. But, the shul also serves as a social hub, even if not just being a social hub when we're in shul, but we have a kiddush in shul. Very often the shul has a kiddush room or a social room where it's used for events and kiddashim and everything else. So we take for granted. We walk in, we walk out. The Beis HaKnesses is Beis Elokim. The Beis HaKnesses is supposed to be a Migdash Ma'at. It's a place that we go to come to beseech, to come and greet and speak to the Borei Olam. It's Beis Elokim in the Halach Beragesh. When we go to shul, we're supposed to come into shul. Look at the words of the Chavetz Chaim. V'yargish v'yirsa atzmai. He should arouse in himself feelings of trembling. Meroiv pachadoi. Now, I'm saying here the words of the Mishnah Berurah. I'm not making this up. This is coming from the Chavetz Chaim. My feeling, based on what I've heard from our Rebbeim over the years, is that maybe we do have to take it down a notch. In other words, see the concept. You know what? Let me give you a mashal amad davar doima. I always remember many years ago. I think I was in 9th grade, and in those years, Yeshiva Staten Island used to sometimes start Elulzman in camp, up in camp, upstate New York, in Ellenville, in the country. Depends how the calendar fell out. If Rosh Chodesh Elul was something like August 10th, so it's still in the middle of the summer, the yeshiva would start Elulzman, Rosh Chodesh Elul, up in camp. So one year, we were starting Elul up in camp, and the manal of the yeshiva, one of my Rabbeim, Rav Gershon Weiss, Tzadik Levracha, he gave the first shmooze, the first Musa shmooze of Elulzman, he gave up in camp. So here it's Elul, right? Rosh Chodesh Elul. We're starting the season of Yomim Noraim. We're just fresh out of the season of Yom Noraim. I'm recording this share in Isra Chag of Sukkos. But Rav Gershon Weiss back then was giving the first shmooze of the Yomim Noraim season, and he was doing it up in camp. And he came into the Beis Medrash and he walked up to the shtender, and he looked like he was about to start, and then he waited, and then he almost started again, and then he waited, and we were all looking like, what's going on? Finally, he looked up, and he said, this wasn't going to be what I was going to start the shmooze with, but I have no choice. Libi noikvi. My heart is troubling me. So I have the need to say it. He said, I understand that we're in camp, and I understand that we're in the country, and that it's hot outside, and the Bacharim have a break a couple of hours in the afternoon, and there's a swimming pool, so they go to the pool to go swimming to cool off. But do you have to splash? It's Elul. It's Elul. We're starting now the season of Yomim Noraim. We're coming to Yom Adin. We're starting the preparations of the Yemei HaTshuva and Yemei Slichas and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And you go into the pool and you splash? Schoik, kalus roish. So I have to tell you that for us Bachrim, for us young American Bachrim, a lot of us walked out from that shmooze. Splashing? What? He's giving us a hard time because we went to the pool and we splashed? I mean, like what? But let me tell you something. I don't remember the rest of the shmooze. I don't remember another thing that he said in that shmooze. But that stuck with me for the rest of my life. Now, it could be that the next day I went to the pool and I splashed. And it could be that we all went to the pool and splashed. Maybe there were a couple of Bachrim who took it really to heart and they didn't splash. But it made a roshim, it made an impression on all of us. He made an impression on us, realize what Elul is. Even if you're not holding there. Even if you're going to go to the pool and you're going to splash. But at least walk away with the concept, with the idea of what Elul is, that Elul is Yemei Adin, Yemei Slichas, Yemei Tshuva, and that there's a seriousness that's supposed to be associated with Elul, and that it's a serious that you don't have. So okay, at least have the concept in your mind so that you could grow to it. Over here, I think we have to look at this Chavetz Chaim in that way. We don't want to scare people off from going to the Beis HaKnesses. Somebody will say, if I have to go to shul, me roiv pachad, so you know what? It's easier for me to stay home. What do I have to deal with roiv pachad? Chas v'chalila. Go to shul, but have a darga. See what the Chavetz Chaim says over here. That when we come to shul, and there's really two things that he's saying. One is beveis elikim nahalach baragesh. When we go to shul, it should be be'emo be'yira. We're coming to beis elikim. We're coming to the Rabbeinu Shalom's home, a place where we gather to speak to Barei Olam. That should be with a shtickle pakad at least. But there's another thing also, and that is va'ani b'roiv chastecha avay veisecha. What a tremendous kindness it is that the Rabbeinu Shalom does for us, that we have the ability to come to shul. You can't take for granted the zechus that we have the ability to come to shul. We have the ability to come speak to Barei Olam. Remember what we said on Rosh Hashanah. To me, it's one of the most moving parts of davening, right? Aleinu l'shabeach la'adain hakoil. We have to give tremendous shevach v'aidah to the Rabbeinu Shalom. Shalo yasanu ki gayei ha'aratzos v'lo samanu ki mishpachos ha'adama. We have the ability to come to a basic knesset, and we have the ability to speak to the Rabbeinu Shalom 3 times a day. That's va'ani b'roiv chastecha. That's a chesed that the Rabbeinu Shalom does for us. We should acknowledge that chesed. Okay, now we move on to Mishnah Berurah Katan Aleph. Kishayehar, in the words of the Mechaber, when we awaken from our sleep, that's when we start reciting the birchas hashachar. And in the opinion of the Mechaber, right when you awaken from your sleep, you say the bracha of Elokai Neshama. Says the Mishnah Berurah, first he gives us a background into the birchas hashachar. Precisely what are these brachas? We know that brachas fall under different classifications. We have birchas hamitzvahs. On Rosh Hashanah, the Shlech Tzibur got up and he made a bracha l'shmaya kol shofar. That's a birchas hamitzvahs. We went into the sukkah. We said Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvahs v'tzivanu leishev basukah. That's a birchas hamitzvahs. Then we have brachas of shvach, praise, right? Shevach v'hodah. We thank the Rabbeinu Shalom. We got into the sukkah. We said Shechiyanu v'kimanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh. That's not a birchas hamitzvahs. That's a bracha of shvach. So then there's birchas hanenin. Before we take pleasure or derive benefit from something in Olam Hazeh, we make a bracha. So before we take a drink of water, we make a shakal niyah b'dvaroi. That's birchas hanenin. And different brachas have different halachos. Birchas hamitzvahs, you could be moitzi somebody. If you are chayiv in kiddush, you could be moitzi somebody else in kiddush. You have a chiyav sukkah, you could be moitzi somebody in a leishev. Even if you don't have to make a leishev, let's say you came into the sukkah and you made a leishev. Now somebody else comes into the sukkah. You could still make a leishev to be moitzi him. It's a birchas hamitzvahs. It's a mitzvah that you're chayiv in. You're chayiv in sukkah. You don't have to make a leishev because you already did, but you have a chiyuv of sukkah. He has a chiyuv of sukkah. There's a din of arvus. You could be moitzi him in the birchas hamitzvahs of sukkah, but you can't be moitzi him in the birchas hanenin. Right? If you already made a shakal and you drinking water already, now you can't make another shakal and be moitzi somebody else. So different brachas have different halachos. What are these brachas? The birchas hashachar. We're going to see it's actually a machlokes the Mechaber and the Ramah. But the Mishnah Berurah right now is coming on the Mechaber. So says the Mishnah Berurah here, nice Katan Aleph. Kol ha-brachas ha'elu, all of these birchas hashachar that we're going to discuss, hu mishum da'asa la'adam le'hanais min ha'olam hazeh b'li bracha. The basis for all of them is the idea that you're not allowed to derive benefit from ha'olam hazeh without making a bracha first. V'chol hanenem in ha'olam hazeh b'li bracha, and anybody who does derive benefit from ha'olam hazeh without making a bracha, ki'ilu ma'al. It's as if he's being moil behegdish. He's improperly making use of something that belongs to hegdish, something that belongs to shamayim. Where does this come from? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Deramu krai ahadadi, because we find that the Chazal asked, there's a stira, a contradiction between two psukim. Ksiv, on the one hand, the pasuk says in Tehillim, La Hashem ha'aretz u'malaya. The world and everything that fills it belongs to Hashem. LaHashem ha'aretz u'maloya. Uksiv, but on the other hand, we have another pasuk in Tehillim that says, "The ha'aretz nasan l'bnei Adam," that the world was given over to Bnei Adam. So which one is it? Is it LaHashem? Does the world belong, so to speak, to the Rebbeinu Shalom? Or is it the ha'aretz nasan l'bnei Adam? Which one is it? Say Chazal, v'tertzu, the Chazal answer, like kasha, there's no question here. Kan koidim bracha, the pasuk of LaHashem ha'aretz u'malaya, that everything belongs, so to speak, to the Rebbeinu Shalom, that's before you make a bracha. Kan la'achar bracha, the pasuk of ha'aretz nasan l'bnei Adam, that's referring to after you make a bracha. After you make a bracha, now the world, so to speak, belongs to you. Ritzonai loymar, what they want to say is, Kaidem bracha hi LaHashem. Before the bracha, everything belongs to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Va'asurim lecha, and therefore it is prohibited to you, kehegdish, like hegdish, the property of the Beis Hamikdash, shehu LaHashem, which belongs to Hashem. You're not allowed to derive benefit from something that belongs to hegdish. If there's an animal that's kadosh, that was set aside for a carbon, you're not allowed to go ahead and use it. If you do, it's me'ila. You have to bring a carbon if you did it b'shogig. But va'achar bracha, but after you make a bracha, hutar hakol l'vnei Adam, then it's va'aretz nasan l'vnei Adam. So you want to take a drink of water? That water belongs to Shamayim. LaHashem ha'aretz u'maloya. How are you allowed to drink it? The answer is you make a bracha. Now you make a bracha, now you're allowed to drink it. Now it's given over to you. V'im kein, if so, Kevin Chekaydam Abracha hi LaHashem, since before a bracha things belong to the Rebbeinu Shalom, Harei HaKol Kaidish LaHashem, everything is Kaidish LaHashem, the water, the soda, the cookie, everything belongs to Rebbeinu Shalom. V'yesh ba mi'ila imnena mimenu, and there would be a concept of mi'ila, of making improper use of kachei shamayim, if you go ahead and derive benefit with it from it without a bracha. K'may b'truma shehi kaidish, like let's say truma, which has kedusha. Lefikach, therefore, tiknu chachamenu zekrainam levracha, the Chazal wa mesakin bracha al kol davar v'davar me'anagas ha'olam sheha'adam nena mimenu. Whatever you're nena from, whatever you derive benefit from, that has to do with olam hazeh, you must make a bracha. So you're going to open your eyes and you're going to see you're deriving benefit from your sense of vision. You got to make a bracha before you can do that. And so on and so forth for all of the birchas hashachar, which we're going to go into. Now, the Mechaber said, you make the bracha of a l'kai neshama k'sheyeyar mishenasai, when you awaken from your sleep. Points out the Mishnah Berurah here, nice cut and beis, Tzarnei Loimar. What the Mechaber wants to say is, when he says, when you awaken from your sleep, dafka soif shnasai, it means at the end of your sleep, when you're getting up for the morning. V'loi calls man sheyakitz beis shashatiyah. It's not that if you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you say Elikai Neshama, you go back to sleep, you wake up at 4 o'clock, you say Elikai Neshama, you go back to sleep, you wake up at 6 o'clock, you say Elikai Neshama. No, it's only when you awaken in the morning, that's when you say Elikai Neshama. Ice cut and gimel. Yomer Elikai Neshama. So this is very important. We refer to the bracha, colloquially, as the bracha of Elikai Neshama. So we say those two words together, Elikai Neshama. If you look in the Siddur, at least in a good print, you'll usually see a comma between Elikai and Neshama. You know, they say commas save lives. Let's eat grandma, right? It's let's eat grandma. It's not let's eat grandma. So commas save lives. So there has to be a comma between Elikai and Neshama. Why? Says the Mishnah Berurah. Tzarich lahafsik ma'at bein Elikai lu Neshama. You have to take a pause between the word Elikai, my God, and the word Neshama. Otherwise, if it's Elikai Neshama, it sounds like you're referring to your Neshama as your Elikai, as your God. No, that would be heretical. You're not allowed to say that. So it's Elikai, my God, Neshama shenasatabi, the Neshama that you placed within me, and so on and so forth. But it's not Elikai Neshama. V'dinei birchas alikai neshama ein le'el b'simin vav b'Mishnah Berurah sif katan yud beis. For additional halachos that apply to the bracha of alikai neshama, he sends us back to Siman Vav, and specifically to Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Yud Beis. Now over there, just to remind you, the Mishnah Berurah mentions the fact that according to many opinions, the bracha of Elikai Neshama is a bracha hasmucha lachaverta. It's a bracha that does not begin with Baruch. It begins Elikai Neshama shenasati b'toirahi. It's a bracha hasmucha lachaverta. It's a bracha that's supposed to come on the heels of a previous bracha that started with Baruch. And the two brachas flowed together. Therefore, the Mishnah Berurah said, really, ideally, we should recite Asher Yotzar and Elikai Neshama together. So that Asher Yotzar is like the opening for the bracha of Elikai Neshama, and Elikai Neshama follows on the heels of Asher Yotzar. He also mentions over there, the Mishnah Berurah, that if somebody neglected to make the bracha of Elikai Neshama, and now he davened Shacharis, so he already said Shemona Esrei, he should no longer say the bracha of Elikai Neshama. Why? Because since in Shemona Esrei you made the bracha of Mechaya HaMesim, and the theme of the bracha of Mechaya HaMesim is similar to the theme of Elikai Neshama, you could no longer recite the bracha of Elikai Neshama. Okay, let's go further here in the Mechaber. Now, many of you may be wondering, how could it be that when you wake up, right away you go ahead and you say Elikai Neshama? Your hands are unclean. You didn't wash the Tilas Yadayim. So hold your horses, we'll get to it. Says the Mishnah Berurah weiter. Says the Mechaber weiter. Kesheyishma karla tarnagoil, when you hear the crowing of the rooster, Yevarech, you make the bracha, hanoisein lasechvi vina, the one who has imbued the sechvi, which we're going to see means the heart, with bina, with understanding. Says the Mishnah Berurah is katan daled. Yeah, lasechvi. What's a sechvi? Says the Chavetz Chaim, halev nikra sechvi b'lashain hamikra. The heart, and in this context we're using heart to mean the mind, is referred to in Tanakh in the pasuk as a sechvi. Where? Tiksiv, because we have a pasuk in Iyuv, Perek Lamed Ches, pasuk Lamed Vav. Oy mi nasan la sechvi vina. Who is it that gave understanding to the heart? V'halev hu hameven. The lave is the center of understanding. V'al yedei abina, and it is through this understanding that Adam Mavchin ben Yom uven Laila, that a person has the understanding to differentiate between day and night. And since the Tarnagol also understands this difference between day and night, and the crowing of the rooster is a benefit for people, because once you hear the call of the rooster, you know it's approximately 2 hours before sunrise. And in the language of some dialect of Arabic, the rooster is called a sechvi. That's why we make this bracha when we hear the crowing of the rooster. And he sends us to Sivches later on. We will see something else. But okay, so in essence, what did the Mishnah Berurah tell us over here? We have a bracha, says the Mechaber, of anoisein la sechvi vina. One of the birchas hashachar we make is hanoisein la sechvi vina, who gave the sechvi understanding. Says the Mishnah Berurah, taich, the sechvi means the heart. So the bracha that we're making is, we're thanking for the Rabbeinu Shalom for imbuing us with bina, with understanding. How does that understanding present itself in the morning? Well, we understand the difference between day and night. Sechvi also in Arabic means the rooster. And the rooster also understands the difference between day and night. That's why he crows before dawn, because he understands the difference between day and night. And that's a benefit to us because that's the primitive alarm clock. So therefore, that's when we make the bracha. Now, it's very interesting. It always troubled me. What exactly is this bina, this understanding that we're thanking the Rebbeinu Shalom for, that we have the understanding to perceive the difference between day and night. You need tremendous understanding to perceive the difference between day and night. Did you ever wonder what makes the rooster crow? So it's very tempting to say that what makes the rooster crow is the approaching light. But that doesn't seem to be the case. I raised chickens, and I had roosters. And the roosters will crow very often very early. You're talking a good 2 hours before sunup. And at that point in time, there's no light. It's not Mishayakir. There's no difference in the sky yet, really, at the time that the rooster crows. So what makes the rooster crow? So the truth is, they've done studies, and the rooster has a biological clock. The rooster has part of the circadian rhythm, but the rooster has a biological clock that works on a 24-hour cycle, and the rooster knows when it's approaching dawn. And that bina is not an understanding. It's not that the rooster is a genius. It's an instinct that is instilled in the lave, so to speak, of the rooster. I'm wondering if this bracha of Hanoise L'Sech Vivina is not the same bracha that we make in Shemoneh Esrei, Ata Chaynin La'adam Das. We'll see as we go further. I'm wondering, is there anybody who says that once you daven Shemoneh Esrei, you can't say Hanoise L'Sech Vivina? We have that once you say Shemoneh Esrei, you can't say Elikan Neshama. We have it on some other brachas too. I don't remember if anybody says that once you say Shemoneh Esrei, you can't say Hanoise L'Sech Vivina because you already said Ata Chaynin La'adam Das. Maybe there is. But I'm wondering if it's not one and the same. Ata Chaynin La'adam Das is talking about the level of Chachma, Bina, Das that makes man different from the rest of the animal kingdom. We have self-awareness, we have Chachma, Bina. Animals don't have that. Animals are instinctive. The rooster has an instinct. He has a 24-hour clock that pings when it's 2 hours before sunup, and that ping makes him crow. But all it is an instinct. He's not doing it to wake you up. Man also has instincts. There are things that we understand instinctively. Maybe that's what this bracha of Hanoise L'Sech Vivina is. Okay, but in any case, the Mishnah Berurah gave us a background into this bracha. Now, there's one other thing I want to mention about the bracha of Hanoise L'Sech Vivina that we'll talk about later. And that is, it seems to me that for the most part, except if you look at a Siddur Hagra, the nusach that we have is Asher Nosan L'Sech Vivina, not Hanoisein L'Sech Vivina. What's the difference between the two? The difference between the two is Asher Nosan L'Sech Vivina is Lashon Avar. Asher Nosan L'Sech Vivina, who gave, past tense, the heart understanding. Hanoisein L'Sech Vivina is Lashon Hoive. It's present tense. Hanoisein L'Sech Vivina, who gives the heart understanding on a continual basis. Now, the truth is that the Lashon of the Gemara, I think this is brought down, I think it's mentioned in a Dirshu footnote. It is. It's Dirshu footnote number 4. Ubenusach brachazu beGemara, the nusach of the Gemara, bracha samach amid beis kasav asher nosan lasechvi, v'chein das hagra, and that's also the opinion of the Gra to follow the nusach of the Gemara, asher nosan lasechvi, which is lashon avar, who gave the heart understanding. V'ilu ator v'ashulchan aruch kasav hanoisein lasechvi. Torah and the Shulchan Aruch write it lashon hoiveh, who gives the heart understanding. Umistimas divrei Mishnah Berurah, from the fact that the Mishnah Berurah is silent on this distinction, as the Mishnah Berurah accepts what the Mechaber writes, Hanoise L'Sech Vivina, and he doesn't comment and say, well, the Gemara says Asher Nosan L'Sech Vivina. Umistimas divrei Mishnah Berurah, near it would appear shenakat kolosh el Shulchan Aruch, that the Mishnah Berurah is very, very comfortable with the nusach of the Shulchan Aruch. V'chein kasav l'halon, and so too we're going to see later on in the Mishnah Berurah. Ubetam hadavar. Now, what's behind this? Kasav Aruch HaShulchan writes shetiknu es habrachos b'lashon hoive v'loy b'lashon avar. Really, we want the brachas to be b'lashon hoive, not lashon avar. Kevin HaKadosh Baruch Hu payil b'chal eis u'b'chal rega. See, really, we want to make the brachas in present tense. Just want to look quickly. I have the Aruch HaShulchan here. Sorry, bear with me for 1 minute. Yeah, here it is. He brings down here also. He says, "Uve Gemara gersa shenosan lasech vivina, uve Rambam v'Torah v'Shulchan Aruch gersa hanoisein lasech vivina." The Shulchan Aruch, it's what we have here, hanoisein lasech vivina v'chein nira ikar. The Aruch HaShulchan also says, like the Mishnah Berurah seems to imply, that the proper lashon is hanoisein lasech vivina. Because all of the brachas should be b'lashon hoive, in the present tense. Who gives? Kama yoitzer ha'ma'oros, who creates the ma'oros, the sun and the moon. Noisein ha'Torah, who gives the Torah. Boirei pri ha'adama, who creates the fruits of the ground. They're not lashon avar, they're lashon hoive. V'atam, and the reason is, why do we make the brachas b'lashon hoive? Mishum da'akadosh baruch hu payil b'chal eisa b'chal rega. Because the fact that you have understanding now at this minute is because the Rebbeinu Shalom is imbuing you with that understanding right now. It's not because the Rebbeinu Shalom did it in Sheishis Yimei Bereshis and therefore it's running on its own. The Rebbeinu Shalom is mechadish b'chal eisa b'chal rega. The Rebbeinu Shalom is making the bria every moment. Like ku'umen basav adam, it's not like a human craftsman. Sharak osa hamalacha v'achakach amedis me'elav v'sara hashgachasa mizeh. It's not like a craftsman who makes a chair and now he gives you the chair and he walks away and the chair is oimid v'hailach and the chair just continues its existence. No. Aval HaKadosh Baruch Hu lo yaser pu'ulaisa v'hashgachasa b'chal eis u'b'chal rega. The Rebbeinu Shalom's bria is ongoing. The fact that you continue to have understanding is because the Rebbeinu Shalom is imbuing you with bina right now. So the bracha is hanoisein lasek vivina, who gives the sek vivina. That's what the Mechaber says. That's what the Mishnah Berurah accepts. That's what the Aruch HaShulchan says, v'chein nira ikar. Yet most of the Sidurim say asher nosan lasek vivina. Okay. Boy, I'm right back now from after a long break in Sukkos, and right away I see how I always fall into the same trap that everything takes a lot longer than I thought it would. But okay, we're going to keep on going. We still have time. Let's see how far we get. Says the Mechaber Vayter, second line into the Siman. Kisheloivesh. When you put on your garment, Yavarech Malbish Arumim, you make the bracha of Malbish Arumim, who clothes the naked. Says the Mishnah Berurah's name, Malbish Arumim. Lav Dafka Sheyashan Aroim. Sounds over here like somebody was sleeping completely undressed. So now when he puts on a garment, he makes a bracha of Malbish Arumim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, Lav Dafka Sheyashan Aroim. Doesn't mean that he slept undressed. When he puts on his outer garment, while he was sleeping, he wasn't wearing his daytime clothing, he wasn't wearing his outer garment. So when he puts on that outer garment, in the world of the Mechaber, which is the world of the Gemara, where you're making all of these brachas al haseder, you're making all of these brachas as you encounter each hana. You woke up from the morning, from your sleep, You acknowledged the fact that the neshama was returned to you. You said Alekai neshama, right? You heard the rooster. You said Asher nasa lasek vivina. Now you're putting on your cloak. You're making a malbish harumin. Says the Mechaber weiter. Kishiyaniach yodav al einov. When you pass your hands over your eyes, Yavarich Paikach Ivrim. You make the bracha of Paikach Ivrim. What does that mean? Says the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Vav, Al Einov. You pass your hands over your eyes. So first of all, says the Chavetz Chaim, you're not allowed to pass your hands over your eyes. Because so far, we're talking about a person who hasn't washed the Tilas Yadayim. Now remember what we learned. Before you wash the Tilas Yadayim, to take the Ruach Ra off your hands, you can't touch your eyes. So what does it mean that he passed his hands over his eyes? Says the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Vav, Pirish al Yedei Hecholok. He used his blanket or he used his undershirt or something, and he went like this to his eyes with the garment interposing between his hands and his eyes to protect his eyes from the Ruach Ra. The Asur Laniach Yodav Aleinov Kodim Anatila Kamash Kasav Siman Daled. But what's the point over here? Again, somebody wakes up, he opens his eyes, but when he's opening his eyes are all crusty and this and that. So he takes something and he goes like that, and now he opens up his eyes and he benefits from the wonderful sense of vision. He's got to make a bracha. Pakeach Ivrim. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam. Pakeach Ivrim, who opens up the eyes of the blind and imbues us with the sense of vision. You got to make a bracha on that before you nene. You're going to be nene from the world, from vision. Got to make a bracha. Weiter in the Mechaber, Kishayeshev, when he sits up, right? Person was laying down, he was sleeping. Now he sits up in bed. Yevarech matir asurim. He makes the bracha of the one who releases the one who was bound. You know, when you're laying down and your body gets stiff and this and that. Now you sit up. You're kind of getting released from that horizontal stiff position. Now you sit up and you're starting to move around again. When you were sleeping, you weren't moving around. Now you thank the Rabbanu Shalom, Matir Asurim, who releases the one that was bound. Kishe Zoykef, when he stands up and he goes into the vertical, Yavarech Zoykef Kifufim. He makes a bracha to Hashem who straightens out the one who was bent. You know, as you get older, you start to appreciate more and more and more the flexibility of the body. As you get older, there's a tendency for everything to stiffen up much more, especially in the morning, especially in bad weather. And it's a fact, people get older, they have to do more stretching exercises because the muscles tense up, the elasticity of the muscles isn't the same. You start to appreciate Zoykef Kefufim. Kishiyaniach Raglov Ba'aretz, when you put your feet down on the ground, Yavarech Raika Ha'aretz Alamoyim. You make a bracha and thank the Rabbanu Shalom for firming the ground, that you have something firm to stand on. Kishenoyel min olav, we've turned to Ayin Dal Amud Beis. Kishenoyel min olav, when you put on your shoes, Yavarech Sha'asali Kol Tsarki. You make a very interesting bracha when you put on your shoes. You thank the Rabbanu Shalom Sha'asali Kol Tsarki, who made for me all of my needs. What do they have to do with shoes? So what the Mefarshim say is that when a person has shoes, he could go to the grocery store and he can get the milk that he needs and the eggs that he needs. He can go to the bank and he can get the money that he needs. He can make a withdrawal. He could go to the post office and mail a letter. Whatever his needs are, if he has shoes, he could go out in the street and attend to his needs. But if he doesn't have shoes, he can't. Why? First of all, it's a sakana. Second of all, it's embarrassing. The Gemara talks about somebody who goes yachef, somebody who goes barefoot. That's considered very, very lowly. That's embarrassing to go barefoot in the street. So putting on shoes is a point at which we could say sha'asali kol tsarki. Now, some of you might have realized I just gave a whole speech before about the fact that all of the brachas are b'lashon hoiveh. All of the lashons are in the present tense. All of the brachas are written in the present tense. Pakeach Ivrim, who opens the eyes. Malbish Arumim, who clothes the naked. How about Sha'asali Kol Tsarki? Sha'asali Kol Tsarki is in the past tense, and nobody argues on that. It's not, I'm not coming to my mind right now how you would say it in the present. You would say, ha'oiseh li kol tzarki, who makes for me all my needs on an ongoing basis. But that's not the bracha that we make. We say, she'osa li kol tzarki, who made for me all my needs. I'm going to give you a beautiful answer to that kasha, but not today because we're running late. But in any case, the Mechaber said, Kishenoil min olav. When you put on your shoes, Yavarach she'asa li kol tzarki. Kishahoilech, when you start to walk around, Yavarech hamechin mitzadei gover. You make the bracha, hamechin, he who establishes mitzadei gover, the footsteps of a person. When you walk around, the Rebbeinu Shalom is walking with you. The Rebbeinu Shalom is taking care where you walk. The Rebbeinu Shalom is, in a sense, directing. You have Bechira, but the Rebbeinu Shalom, the pasuk just escaped me, Mitzadei Gever Kainanu. The Rebbeinu Shalom establishes the footsteps of a person and guides the footsteps of a person. Now here it is an interesting Mishnah Berurah. Ois Katan Zayin, again, we have the same issue comes up of the present tense and the past tense. Here we have an aguda, uba aguda kasav asher heichen. The aguda changes this bracha to the past tense. Asher heichen, who established in the past, not who establishes on an ongoing basis. And I have some thoughts as to why that might be, but before I say it, I want to take a look I want to research it a little bit. Okay, let's go a little bit weiter. Kishechoiger chagoyroi, when a person puts on his belt, Yevarech Oizer Yisrael b'gvura, he makes the bracha of Oizer Yisrael b'gvura, the one who girds Klal Yisrael with strength. Hagah, says the Ramah, this doesn't necessarily refer only to a belt. Oy loivesh ha'avneit, it could be referring to what he puts on his pants. Hamafsik be'liboy la'erva, which is the garment that separates between the heart and the mokayim ha'erva. So the Mechaber said you make the bracha Oizei Yisrael b'gvura when you put on a belt. The Ramah says, or it could be the avneit, which the Mishnah Berurah is going to tell us means the pants. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah Ches, avneit tahacha hu michnasayim. When the Mechaber uses the word avneit here, he doesn't mean a belt, he means pants. V'cheino avneit shehizkir Shulchan Aruch b'reish Siman Tzadik Aleph. So too in Siman Tzadik Aleph, we're going to have a halacha which just escaped me. I looked it up before and I forgot what it is. Tzarech le'ezar ezar b'shas atfila. Oh, right. There's a halacha that you have to put on a belt even if you're wearing an avneit. So obviously the avneit doesn't mean a belt. So what does the avneit mean? It means pants. So here also, when we say an avneit, we could be talking about the pants. V'cheino avneit shizkar Shulchan Aruch b'reish Siman Tzadik Aleph. The afal gav the b'loshen Torah pirush avneit to a chagoyra. Even though in the pasuk, when the pasuk uses avneit, it means a belt. Kidiksiv, like it says by the Kohen, uba avneit bad yachgar, that he wears a linen belt. Avneit in the lashon of Chazal, they use the word avneit sometimes for pants. And that's why the Mishnah Berurah, the Ramah over here, see, the Mechaber said, Kishechoiger chagoyroi, when you gird yourself with your belt. Kishechoiger, that's a lashon that means putting on a belt. The Ramah says, Oy loivesh ha'avneit. Levisha refers to a garment. A belt is not a garment. So kisheloivesh ha'avneit, he means when you put on your pants. Now, I want to go a little bit weiter. Says the Mechaber now, kishemesim koiva oy mitznefes beroishoi. When you put on a hat or a turban on your head, yevarech oiter Yisrael b'sefara. Then you make the bracha of oiter Yisrael b'sefara, he who has crowned Klal Yisrael b'sefara with glory. So we have two very interesting brachas over here. Oizer Yisrael b'gvura, the Rebbe Shalom girded a yid with strength, and Oiter Yisrael b'sefara, and he crowned a yid with glory. Now, clearly what's different about these two brachas than the rest is by the rest of the brachas we don't mention Yisrael. We say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam pekach ivrim. The Rebbe Shalom opens up the eyes of the blind. He grants me the ability to see. We don't say, pekach einei Yisrael, pekach ivrei Yisrael. We don't say, malbish arume Yisrael, malbish arumim. Right? All of these, none of them make a distinction between a Yid and an Eino Yehudi. But over here, suddenly it's Oizer Yisrael Bigvura. The Rebbe Shalom girds a Yid with strength. Oiter Yisrael B'sefara. He crowns a Yid with glory, with splendor. What's going on here? Says the Mishnah Berurah. Oiter Yisrael, Ois cut and test. Hizkir Yisrael B'brachazu. Over here, we mention a Yid in this bracha, v'chein ba'oizer Yisrael b'gvura, and so too by the bracha of oizer Yisrael, we mention a Yid specifically. Ma'she'en kein ba'acherois. Hatam, the reason is, sha'ashor hu lahanas ha'olam sha'hakol shavin behen. All of the other brachas are benefits that the entire world benefits from, both a Yehudi and an Eino Yehudi. We all benefit from clothing. We all benefit from the sense of vision. We all benefit from the bina, the understanding of the heart, the instincts of the mind, both a Yehudi and an Eino Yehudi. Ma'she'en kein be'elu shnayim hein b'Yisrael l'chud. But these two brachas, Oizer Yisrael and Oiter Yisrael, apply only to a Yid, not to an Eino Yehudi. Why? Mishum tznius. Because we have a concept of tznius. We have a concept of modesty, of humbleness, and also of dignity. Tznius is such a difficult word to translate. We tend to think of tznius right away, the length of a skirt, the height of a dress, the length of a woman's sleeve. Right? Tznius, we right away think women. No. Tznius applies to men the same way it applies to women. And it doesn't apply to the length of the pant leg or to the length of your sleeve. It's a mindset, tznius. Tznius is modesty, humbleness, but also dignity. Dignity. Right? The whole world's been talking about the Queen of England that died recently. Guess what? The Queen of England, to a large extent, dressed in a tzniustic fashion. Yeah, when she was younger and better looking, maybe she wore things that were low cut. But klape, the world that she lived in, right? You weren't going to find the last 30 years the Queen of England, walking around in a short skirt. It's not just modesty, it's dignity. She's a queen. She's a dignitary. And even by them, somehow they recognize the fact that somebody who has greater dignity has to dress in a more dignified fashion. And a more dignified fashion means more covered up. So these celebrity hilarias that the non-Jewish world, that they go ahead and they deify and they look up to, right? They're dreck. That's what they are. They have no dignity. They don't even understand the beginnings of a concept of dignity, and that's why they dress the way they do, right? And here you see it in the words of the Chavetz Chaim. Oizer Yisrael b'gvura, Oiter Yisrael b'sefara. Because we have a concept of tznius, we have a concept of dignity, and that's something that the Rabbeinu Shalom imbued us with. Oizer Yisrael b'gvura. Why do we put on a belt? Why? For what purpose? By the Eino Yehudim, very often they have a saying, gird your loins, right? A Gibor put on a belt. What was the purpose of the belt? It held up his armor maybe, but it's also to put on a sword. You put on your clay zayin, your clay milchama, your weapons, went on your belt. Koichi v'aitzim yadi. Why does a Yisrael put on a belt? Lahavdil, what were the words over here of the Mishnah Berurah? It's the avnate. What's the purpose of the avnate? In the words of the Ramah, ha'avnate hamafsik bein libay la'erva. Why must we put on a belt? To make a separation between the leiv, the seat of machshava, and the makayim ha'erva. The makayim ha'erva, which is the seat of taiva and lust and taivas olam hazeh. We put on a belt not to glorify kaichi vaitzim yadi. We put on a belt in order to elevate olam haba, to elevate the neshama, to elevate the ruchnius over the gashmius. Oizer Yisrael bigvura, ezeu gibar hakayvesh es yitzroi. That's the gvura that we're talking about. That gvura is by a yid. It's not by an Eina Yehudi. They don't have the first concept of that gvura. That's why we make a bracha, Oizer Yisrael bigvura. Oiter Yisrael b'sifara. The Rebbe Shem crowned us with glory. Why do we put on a hat? Yarmulke, Yorei Malka, Yorei Melech. We put on a hat to remind ourselves that of Yerushalayim, that there's something above us, that we have to have Yerushalayim, that we have fear of heaven, that we are subjugated to heaven. That's why we wear a yarmulke. That's Tiferet. That's Tiferes. Oiter Yisrael b'Sifara. The Rebbe Shem crowns us with glory. The Yerushalayim that we have, that's our glory. Why do they put on a hat? By them, it's the opposite. Respect, they take their hat off. So they don't have a concept of Oiter Yisrael b'Sifara. We do. So again, let's just finish off this ice cotton over here in the Mishnah Berurah. His ice cotton test. His ki Yisrael b'bracha zu v'chein ba'oizer Yisrael ma she'en kein ba'acherois hatam she'ashar hu la'anas ha'olam she'akol shavin b'hen ma she'en kein be'elu shtayim hein b'Yisrael l'chud mishum tznius. The chagoira, the belt that we put on, hu mishum shelo yehe libay raya es ha'erva, to make a separation between our leiv, our machshava, and the makam ha'erva. The koivai mishum tznius, and the hat is also because of tznius. Kedi isa b'Shabbos tav kuf nun vav kasi reishech, cover your head mipnei emsa demarach, out of fear of your master, out of Yerushalayim. Let's just go back up to the Shulchan Aruch and finish off Sif Aleph. 3 lines down near the end of the line. Kishayital yadav. Now finally, when you wash your hands, you do netilas yadayim. Yavarech al netilas yadayim. Now you make the bracha of al netilas yadayim. Kishayir chatz panav. When you wash your face and you refresh yourself from your sleep, Yavarech ha'mavir sheina me'enoi. That's when you make the bracha of mavir sheina, who removed sleep from my eyes. And that bracha continues v'hi ratzain ad baruch atah Hashem goimel chasadim tovim la'amo Yisrael, which is all one long bracha. And therefore the Mechaber says, Ein lanois amein achar ha'mavir sheina me'enoi. You don't answer amein when you hear somebody say ha'mavir sheina me'enoi usinuma me'alafapai. You don't say amein, because it's not the end of the bracha. It continues Yehiratzain. Ad sheyachtam hagoyim chasadim tovim la'amo Yisrael shakol bracha achasi. Says the Mishnah Berurah cut in Yud Yehiratzain. This is the Yehiratzain of Shetar Yilenu b'Sarasecha Lashon Rabim. So, just to wrap up over here, Sif Aleph, in the world of the Chazal, the Gemara and Bracha Samach Hamid Beis, in the world of the Mechaber, in the world of the Rambam, all of these birchas hashachar are being made in the morning when somebody wakes up, and as he encounters each one of these hanois ha'olam hazeh, he makes the appropriate bracha. So he wakes up, he says Elokai neshama. He hears the call of the rooster, Hadais l'sech vivina. He puts on a garment, malbash arumim. He sits up, mater asurim. He stands up, zeikef kefufim. He takes a step, roikar tzalamonim. He starts walking, heichem tzadi gover. Each one, as he encounters it, he makes a bracha. Then he washes his hands, he makes a bracha netilas yadayim. We all are going to have the question, how are you making any of these brachas before netilas yadayim? I'll give you the answer to that in an aruch hashulchan, but it's going to have to wait till tomorrow. There's a couple of other things I want to discuss based on what we learned today, but it's all going to have to wait for tomorrow because we're already over time. It's such a pleasure to be back. I hope everybody had a wonderful Yom Tov and a wonderful Yomim Neraim season. We should all have a good year. It should be a Shana Tova. The Rosh Hashanah should imbue everybody with brachas. You know, in the world of the Svar Magdoshim, in the Chassidish world, we don't have the Gemara Din yet. We still have Zayis Chanukah coming up. So despair not. Everybody should have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful year, and we should be zechus to learn much Torah together. Be well.